Hello guys, in this video we'll be taking a look at a game that I played where I set up a trap that my opponent was unfamiliar with and I managed to win the game thanks to a beautiful tactic. So we'll be taking a deep dive into chess traps, the ones that I think are good, the ones that I think are bad, and also the fun involved in the traps. It's probably the reason why we want to play the traps. Let's get started. So starting off with e4, opponent plays e6, the French defense. I played d4, taking up 2 pawns in the center, pretty good. d5 from my opponent, attacking right away, that's the point. Now I play e5, which is the advanced variation. Now the opponent plays c5, immediately challenging my center pawns. So I defend the d4 pawn with c3. And now queen b6. This move's pretty good. The point of this move, I believe, is to take my d4 pawn and threaten this b2 pawn as well in the future if this bishop ever moves. I think that's the point of the move. I play knight f3 to defend this pawn one more time. And then my opponent goes knight c6 to attack pawn again. And now I play this move. Now, this move is just a developing move. That's all it is. It just develops a bishop, and I am able to castle on the next move, and then I'll just develop my knight here if I can draw the arrow, and then a chess game has to be played. Now, my opponent takes this pawn, I take back, so c takes d4, and now this is where my opponent makes the mistake. So, this move has a hidden idea to it. This pawn cannot actually be taken. But why? Because if the knight takes, I take the knight, and if you take with the queen, I have discover check, and this wins the queen. And in the game, my opponent takes. The way that you deal with mistakes like this, so you'll be facing traps like this, tricks like this, and it sounds harsh, but the best way to deal with them is to face them. But when you face them, when you fall into them, you take note, you save the game somewhere, and you write this down. Okay, so I cannot take that pawn, because if I do, then there's this trick winning the queen, which obviously means that I can take this knight. And now my opponent realizes this. So my opponent realizes they don't go here and lose the queen. They understand the problem. And this is how you learn. So my opponent plays bishop b4 check. The game's not over, but it's quickly gonna get out of hand from here. I block with the knight. The queen can still not take this knight because of that, like I showed you. And now my opponent plays a6. Not really sure what that does, to be honest. And then I go here, try to set up some discovered attack here. Opponent takes the knight with check. I take the bishop. And now this move is pretty good. It attacks both pawns. And I realize, yeah, I can definitely not defend both of these pawns. There's no way to defend both of them. And this is a pretty big threat. I gotta keep in mind. For instance, if this queen like takes this pawn and I block, for example, I just immediately lose the rook. That's not good. My king's still in the center. I'm not a fan of it. So because I cannot save both pawns, I'm just gonna castle, which is the best move, surprisingly. I was not expecting that. Opponent takes this pawn, obviously, because if you take this pawn, you do allow this rook the c-file, which is obviously not what my opponent wanted. So my opponent takes this pawn. And now I see that I can unleash a discovered attack. So I play rook e1. In the future, I might move my bishop, attack the queen, not there, but somewhere. I might go here and here, for example. That's an idea. And now opponent goes here, and this is where I unleash the tactic. Knight f5. Brilliant move, according to chess.com. I'm pretty proud of this move. So the point of this, it attacks the queen, it attacks the pawn. And the only way to do like anything about it is to like go here, get hit with this, or go back and your queen is extremely passive. And if this knight gets taken, which is what happens in the game, I play bishop to c5 check. And now I check the king and I attack the queen at the same time. So you might see this and wonder, why isn't this like also winning a queen? Yes, it's true. But the bishop is better on this square. These squares are close to the king. They are more important, okay? If the bishop goes over here, you see, these squares are not as important. So you want to like cover the diagonal that is pretty close to the king, which is this one, right? That's why this move is better than this move. And this is how I win a queen. I sack my knight, but I win a queen. Okay, opponent goes there, take So it was better to take this pawn because this queen cannot move. I should have been patient, but I was like, man, that's a free queen. I might as well take it. So I took it. Now my opponent takes my rook with the pawn. Pretty good move, because if you take with the bishop, you are toasted. It can go really badly if you take with the bishop. So like, you want to keep the pawn structure intact, which is why my opponent takes with the pawn. Nice move. And now, yeah, and now I go all in. I'm just like, yeah, I sacked my knight. Let's sack the bishop too. The point is, I'm breaking apart the pawn structure. I'm trying to get this. So if this, then I go here and I'm bringing my rook. And that's exactly what happens. This did go my way. Now, it was better to give the check here. Let's go back. It was better to give out this check. It was better to give this check because the only move is g6. And now you go queen g5. This knight has difficulty moving. This pawn can attack, but it hangs this pawn. So that doesn't work. And that's why it was better to give up the check. But I was like, no, actually, I just want to take this pawn, open up the king. And yeah, that was still not a good move. My opponent should have just ignored me. Should have been just like, okay, let's develop my knight. Let's not allow the queen in, right? My opponent saw the bishop and I was like, yeah, let's just take the bishop. It's understandable, I understand the move. It's completely normal. You see a piece hanging, might as well take it. But in some cases, it can lead to immediate doom. I take this pawn. And now, instead of moving the knight here and attacking my queen, probably my opponent was afraid of checks. See? My opponent goes here. And this allows me a beautiful move. I don't have to move my queen, but it's under attack. What? Wait, do you have to take this? Do you have to take this knight? Yeah, it's a pretty good move, but there's a better one. Rook e1. Now, my opponent cannot castle because of the queen. This knight cannot be defended at all, and mate will soon be threatened. So my opponent goes here. I take this bishop. Tries to run away, but I take the knight. I see this queen check, and I wanted the queen to be all up in his face. I could have made it sooner like this, but that's okay. Queen takes e7 check. King there. Bishop d6, and now I pre-move checkmate because this is unstoppable. Queen c7 right here in the king's face. The thing is with chess traps is that they are pretty tricky, but if your opponent knows how to play against them, you can easily get a losing position. This one was very slow. It was just developing a bishop. The way you play against this is that you take the pawn, as my opponent did, and now you play bishop d7, and now you're actually threatening to take it. Yeah, that's the point. Now you bring the bishop back. According to the engine, you just have to bring the bishop back to defend the pawn. If you do it like this, you lose this pawn, right? So this is a very solid move. It doesn't create any weaknesses. This is simply how the opening is played, and it sounds ridiculous. And the way you learn from this, like I said, is you gotta fall into these traps and then take notes, okay? So you gotta go here, and now I just castle. Apparently this is a move that can be played as well. You just sack. And now if you take this, just allow the queen in. You do lose the pawn, but you have some activity apparently. You can go here and attack the queen or something. I mean, not right away, but maybe in the future. Develop, try to do something over here. So yeah, chess traps can be tricky, but you have to make sure they're not risk aversive. That's my opinion on them. So let's take a look at a few traps. Starting off e4, d5 Scandinavian. We'll take a look at the most popular one, the Tennyson Gambit, or you might know it as the Intercontinental Ballistic Missile. So you gambit a pawn, you go here, and you attack the pawn like this. It's a pretty interesting gambit, but it's also pretty risk aversive because you don't know what your opponent will play already, but you might know it as this. Knight f6, d3, e takes d3, bishop takes d3. And now your opponent gets tired of this knight and just goes, okay, I'm gonna attack your knight. And now your opponent loses because of this move. Brilliant move! Threaten this, and if the king takes, you go here, and your opponent has to take this bishop. Obviously, you're gonna take the bishop. You cannot go back because of this bishop. If you move here, obviously you're just gonna make it worse for yourself. And now you take the queen. That's the whole point. But this doesn't have to happen. Like, we're already starting off here. Let's review this as well. So this is already a mistake according to the engine. Obviously, during the Scandinavian, you might just take this, you might develop, like, you do you here. But this move, on the other hand, does lose this pawn. And now you go here. But the thing is, your opponent doesn't even have to defend like this. Your opponent has two other ways of defending, either with the pawn, which is not good, or with the bishop. This is minus 0.4, which is not good. So you might be studying one of these traps. You might wonder, wow, that's a good chess trap. Let me play it in a game. And then you just get hit with something like this. You might go, oh my god, I can attack. But no, the bishop just goes back, and now you lost the pawn. See? This move is not as good. Granted, it's not as good because you can go here and threaten this. So you have to go e6, and you end up getting the pawn back. It's still equal. It's still pretty tough to play. But let's say your opponent does play this. Now, you play this. You don't get your bishop out to attack f7 right away. There's e6, which is the only move that keeps it at balance. So you play this, you want to play the trap, right? And now there's this interesting bishop g4 move that straight up attacks the queen. If you block, there's e takes f3. And now you have to take with the knight. If you take with the pawn, look, there's bishop h5 apparently. This pawn cannot move anymore. And you don't have much activity. This knight is not gonna do anything here. See? So you have to take with the knight that you moved there in order to trap your opponent, but it didn't work. And now just simple move here. e6 or e5, or just develop, like even this works. 0.9 advantage for black. That's not good. That's not what you want. And it's not just bishop g4. There's also this move. It's just defending. It's okay. If you take this, you may not be able to castle. And you lose the pawn. You get this threatened. So you might take this. Now you're down a pawn. See? Not that great, if you ask me. You gotta, like, stop playing this, like, hope chess. I'm not a big fan of hope chess. So I get that these traps are fun. You might wanna play versus a friend. Maybe they'll fall into it. But if they don't, you can easily get a losing position. Opponent doesn't have to play h6 either. This is the move that allows the thing in the first place. And you already had to go through these things where, like, look, in this position, not even this is the best move. This is apparently the best move. Just sacrificing this pawn. And now you attack the knight. And you just go here. This knight was supposed to go here. Why is this knight doing this dance? What's it doing? What for? It has no reason to do all of this. You just wasted so many moves. See? Okay. There are a lot of traps like this. Even here, look. You can just develop. It's a natural move. And you might wonder, well, it does protect the queen. It does help. But this is a really natural move either way. Now you cannot do this. And it's another mistake people make. Like, they see this and they still think they can do the trap. But no. Because here, this queen is guarded. It doesn't work anymore. And there are a ton of traps like this. Let's take a look at more. So let's just play with black. Let's flip the board. So the England Gambit. You're gonna see the England Gambit, another one. So takes, and now you play this move. which is already losing. You're supposed to play this move. You're just supposed to attack the pawn. So the point is, you attack this pawn twice, and then you have another trap, which we'll get into a little bit later. So bishop c5, already a mistake. Stockfish is saying to just either develop or even play this to threaten this move. Is it just a prophylactic move? It doesn't make much sense to me, but this is really a natural move. You give away a pawn, what are you gonna do then? Okay, so you play this, and then knight f3, which is apparently the most common move, but it really isn't. It does defend the pawn, it may be common, but our developing moves are also pretty common. Even this. It's completely fine, 1.1 advantage. Hold on, let's go back. And now this move? Not this move. Why? That's how the trap should go. And now you play this. You want your opponent to take this so that you win their queen, right? That's the point of the trap. It's called the Rosen trap. No hate to Rosen. This trap can catch someone off guard. Oh my god, I just blundered my knight. Oh no, my knight.
Oh no, my knight. My knight's not defended. Okay, checkmate.
That's a dumb Rosen impression. And then you win the queen, but your opponent does not have to take this knight. I mean, obviously they cannot take this pawn either because of that, but your opponent can do something else. They can just straight up develop a piece, and now you just take this, and your trap doesn't work, and you have a worse position. There are other traps. So we shifted off the boards. This is also a trap for the black pieces. Like I said, in the previous one, we're going to show it. We're going to show the one we are talking about. So e4. D4, e5, the England gambit again. Knight c6, taking the pawn, defending the pawn. Knight with knight f3, makes sense. And now you add another attacker, which is literally the only point of the England gambit, I believe. Whatever. And now your opponent's like, okay, this pawn's attacked twice, and so I'll protect it once, let's protect it again. And now queen b4 check. So this is another attack. And so is this bishop, so you slide back. And now you take this pawn. And the trap goes like this. So bishop c3, you can already see the eval bar going down. And bishop b4, you cannot take my queen because I'll take your king. So the best move is probably to take this and then allow this and get this incredible fork. You have to sack material. You have to sack this knight to avoid that. And you've probably seen this move, like only this move. If takes with the knight, then you take this rook, and you're completely winning. And if you take with the queen, you get mated. So this is probably all you know about this trap. That's the thing with chess traps. You should learn them. You should know that sometimes a simple move like this just destroys it. So this is probably the most egregious example of them all. This is plus 1.2 for white. You did not give away a pawn this time, props. You managed to win it back, but now this queen's a target. Like, look at this. If you play a move like this, rook b1, queen a3, knight b5, threatens this and the queen. You lose the game. You just lose. You should be aware when playing these moves. Let's take a look at a trap that's actually fun and effective, okay? So this is from the white perspective, and it's called the Alien Gambit. So you might have heard of it. It's named after Willie Allen, a great chess YouTuber, a great chess streamer. I recommend watching. So this is the opening that he came up with. So starts off e4, and now it's either the French or the Caro. It works in both of the openings. So Caro-Kann, d4, 2 pawns in the center, d5, and now you play this interesting knight d2 move. Take, main line, and now instead of taking this knight, you go here. And this is the Alien Gambit. Starts off like this. Your opponent has to play this move. Your opponent has to attack this knight. So this is something that you should keep in mind if you want to play this. Okay? And now you play knight takes f7. You might look at this and go, wow, that's a bad move. Yeah. Might be. I recommend playing this in short time controls because of that. If your opponent defends perfectly, which might not happen, the point of this opening is to attack on the light squares. So it's to trade off a knight here, get this knight out of the h5 square. So that's why the opponent has to play this move, to weaken the light squares around the king. So you either play this or this, you attack like this, but make sure that you play this in short time control and you watch Witty Alien's video on how to play it. I'll link it in the video description for you if you want. Don't play this if your opponent just goes here, for instance. This is not good. Your opponent hasn't weakened their light squares, so this is not a good way to play. Apparently this is the Karpov variation. I've never heard of it, but it's definitely not the Alien Gambit. So be aware that your opponent has to play this before you take this. You can also take it earlier. I mean, it's completely fine. But make sure, let's just play a random move. Now it's a bit worse because this move doesn't really do much, but whatever. Make sure that this is how you play the opening. So you just bring your pieces out like this. I get it. Chess traps are fun if you know how to play them well. But if they're really risk aversive and if your opponent defends properly, you can get a winning position. I get it. You want to have fun in chess, that's fine. I'm a person that generally prefers improvement and then fun. A lot of people play chess for fun, but I think that if you want to take it seriously and you wanna improve at chess a lot, you should play traps or gambits for that matter that are not risk aversive. If your opponent doesn't take the bait, you're still fine. You still have a good position. So I recommend playing the alien gambit in time control like blitz or bullet. I'm not trying to insinuate anyone, I'm trying to insult anyone for playing chess in a certain way. So the thing is with traps, they sort of depend on the type of chess player you are. You can play traps or gambits that get your opponent out of their comfort zone. But at the same time, if your opponent knows how to deal with them, you'll not get a losing position out of them. So that's it. That's all I have to say. I hope this video was useful to you. I get it that my opinion is a bit biased, but you do you. You make progress however you want in chess. If you want to play the intercontinental ballistic missile, that's completely up to you. But I recommend getting your opponent out of your comfort zone while making sure that if your opponent doesn't take the bait, you still have a good position and can still play for the advantage. If you want to check out my last video about piece activity, which is very important, click here. If you want to check out my YouTube channel, click here. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.